Have you ever stood beneath the towering doorways of an ancient cathedral and wondered why they built them so impossibly tall? Or walked through the ruins of a megalithic site, staring up at stone blocks that weigh hundreds of tons, perfectly fitted together without mortar, and asked yourself how our ancestors could have possibly moved them? What if I told you that scattered across every continent on Earth, buried in dusty museum archives, and dismissed by mainstream archaeology, lies evidence that our planet was once home to beings of extraordinary size, beings so large that the doorways we think are grand were actually built to their scale, and those impossible stone monuments suddenly make perfect sense. Tonight, we're diving deep into one of the most suppressed mysteries in human history. The evidence is everywhere once you know where to look. Newspaper reports from the 1802nd documenting the discovery of 9-foot skeletons in American burial mounds. Ancient texts from cultures across the globe describing races of giants who walked among mortals. Archaeological anomalies that challenge everything we think we know about our past. And architectural marvels that seem designed for inhabitants far taller than any human alive today. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just about finding big bones in the ground. We're talking about a systematic pattern of evidence that suggests these giants weren't just random genetic anomalies, but organized civilizations with advanced knowledge of construction, astronomy, and engineering. Civilizations whose very existence has been carefully erased from our history books. I'm going to take you on a journey through the forbidden archaeology of giants, revealing discoveries that have been hidden away in private collections and government vaults. We'll examine the suspicious pattern of how these finds are reported, then mysteriously vanish. We'll explore ancient texts that describe these beings in vivid detail, not as mythological creatures, but as flesh and blood inhabitants of our world. And we'll visit sites around the globe where the architecture itself screams of builders who stood head and shoulders above modern humans. But most importantly, I'm going to show you why this evidence has been so aggressively suppressed. Because if giants once ruled this earth, it changes everything we think we know about human evolution, about our place in history, and about who we really are as a species. The trail begins in the dusty newspaper archives of 19th century America, where reports of giant discoveries appear with startling frequency. The Zanesville Signal from Ohio, dated December 1895, reported the excavation of a burial mound that contained skeletons measuring between 7 and 8 feet in height. The Cincinnati Enquirer documented the discovery of remains over 9 feet tall, with skulls so large they wouldn't fit over the head of a normal-sized man. The San Antonio Express described the unearthing of a skeleton that measured 11 feet from head to toe, found in a carefully constructed stone chamber deep underground. These weren't isolated incidents. Between 1,850 and 1,920, literally thousands of such reports appeared in local newspapers across America. The Smithsonian Institution was frequently called upon to examine these remains, often taking possession of the bones and promising detailed study. Yet mysteriously, very few of these specimens ever appeared in official scientific literature. The bones would disappear into the vast storage facilities of major museums, never to be seen again by the public. What makes this pattern even more suspicious is the consistency of the reports. These weren't wild tales spun by imaginative journalists. They included specific measurements, detailed descriptions of burial artifacts, and often featured quotes from respected local officials, doctors, and clergy who witnessed the excavations firsthand. The Cherokee County Herald in Kansas reported that local physician Dr. R.J. Mason examined remains that measured 8 feet 4 inches, noting the unusual thickness of the skull and the extraordinary size of the teeth. The Nevada Daily Gazette described how Professor A.E. Douglas of the University of Arizona personally oversaw the excavation of 7-foot remains found in association with sophisticated copper tools, But it wasn't just the American frontier where these discoveries were made. European excavations throughout the 19th century uncovered similar anomalies. In France, workers digging near Castelnau in 1890 discovered bone fragments that, when reconstructed, suggested a human standing nearly 12 feet tall. The remains were examined by Professor Georges Vacher de Lapouge at the University of Montpellier, who confirmed their authenticity before they mysteriously vanished from the university's collection. Germany yielded its own giants. In 1577, near the city of Willisau, workers unearthed the skeleton of what locals called the Giant of Willisau, measuring an estimated 14 feet in length. The bones were displayed publicly for decades before disappearing during World War II, allegedly destroyed by bombing, though no records confirm this official explanation. What's particularly intriguing is how these discoveries align with the oral traditions and written records of indigenous peoples worldwide. The Paiute tribe of Nevada spoke of the Site-Ka, a race of red-haired giants who were eventually driven into caves by an alliance of local tribes. When archaeologists finally excavated Lovelock Cave in 1912, they found mummified remains of unusually tall individuals with reddish hair, exactly matching the tribal descriptions passed down through generations. The Choctaw people of the American Southeast told stories of the Naholo, a race of white giants who lived in the region before being conquered by their ancestors. When burial mounds throughout Mississippi and Alabama were excavated in the late 1800s, many contained skeletal remains of 7 to 8 foot individuals with distinctly different skull shapes than typical Native American remains. Across the Pacific, the Maori of New Zealand preserved legends of the Rakarua, a race of fair-skinned giants who inhabited the islands before the Polynesian arrival. Archaeological excavations in the 20th century uncovered skeletons matching these descriptions, though most were quickly removed from public view by government authorities. These oral traditions weren't simply mythological stories passed down around campfires. They contained specific geographical information, detailed physical descriptions, and often included information about the giants' tools, weapons, and cultural practices. When modern excavations began uncovering physical evidence that matched these ancient accounts with remarkable precision, it suggested that indigenous peoples had preserved accurate historical records, not fantasies. The biblical account of giants adds another layer to this mystery. The Old Testament repeatedly references the Nephilim, described as the offspring of divine beings and human women who became mighty men of old, men of renown. The Book of Numbers specifically mentions Anak and his descendants, giants so large that the Israelite spies felt like grasshoppers in comparison. Deuteronomy lists several giant kings, including Og of Bashan, whose iron bed measured 9 cubits by 4 cubits, suggesting a ruler standing well over 13 feet tall. But the biblical references weren't unique. Ancient texts from civilizations across the globe describe similar beings. The Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh depicts its hero as a giant among men, capable of feats impossible for normal humans. Hindu scriptures describe the Daityas and Danavas, races of giants who possessed advanced knowledge and ruled vast kingdoms before being overthrown by the gods. Greek mythology is filled with titans and giants who shaped the early world, being so powerful that it took the combined might of the Olympian gods to defeat them. What's remarkable is how these diverse cultures, separated by thousands of miles and centuries of time, developed such similar accounts of giant races. The descriptions are too consistent, too detailed, and too geographically widespread to dismiss as mere coincidence or shared psychological archetypes. They suggest that encounters with beings of unusual size were a common part of early human experience, preserved in the collective memory of our species. Archaeological evidence supports this interpretation in ways that mainstream science struggles to explain. The megalithic structures found on every inhabited continent display construction techniques that seem impossibly advanced for their supposed time periods. At Sacsayhuaman in Peru, massive stone blocks weighing over 200 tons are fitted together with such precision that you can't slip a knife blade between them. The stones are cut in complex, interlocking shapes that would challenge modern engineering, yet traditional archaeology insists they were moved and positioned using only copper tools, wooden rollers, and human labour. The same impossible precision appears at sites worldwide. The trilithons of Stonehenge, each weighing approximately 50 tons, were somehow transported from quarries over 150 miles away, then erected with astronomical precision. The massive stones of Baalbek in Lebanon include the famous Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighing an estimated 1,000 tons, carved and partially moved using techniques that remain unexplained. At Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, recently dated to over 11,000 years old, enormous T-shaped pillars weighing up to 16 tons were carved with intricate reliefs and arranged in perfect circles, suggesting organizational capabilities far beyond what hunter-gatherer societies should have possessed. When you consider these monuments in the context of giant builders, the impossible suddenly becomes logical. Beings standing 12 to 15 feet tall, with proportional strength increases, could manipulate stones that would require dozens of normal-sized humans to move. The precision fitting of megalithic blocks makes perfect sense when you imagine craftsmen whose hands could span distances impossible for human workers, whose leverage and lifting capacity exceeded our own by orders of magnitude. This interpretation gains credibility when you examine the proportional relationships between these ancient structures and normal human dimensions. Doorways at sites like Nan Madol in Micronesia or the ancient temples of Malta are consistently built to scales that dwarf human visitors. Staircases feature steps that require abnormal effort to climb. Ceilings soar to heights that serve no practical purpose for human occupants. These aren't ceremonial choices or artistic flourishes. They suggest builders who needed such dimensions for their own comfortable use. The architectural evidence becomes even more compelling when you examine the tool marks and construction techniques preserved in these ancient sites. At the granite quarries of Aswan in Egypt, you can still see the scoop marks where massive obelisks were carved from solid bedrock. These marks are far too large and deep to have been made by copper chisels wielded by human hands. The gouges suggest tools operated by beings with significantly greater leverage and strength, cutting through one of the hardest stones on Earth, as if it were soft clay. Similarly, the polygonal masonry found throughout Peru displays a signature that defies conventional explanation. Each stone is cut to fit its neighbours with organic, flowing curves that interlock in 3 dimensions. Modern stonemasons, even with diamond-tipped power tools, struggle to replicate this precision. Yet ancient builders accomplished this feat on a massive scale, creating walls that have withstood centuries of earthquakes that toppled later Spanish constructions built on top of them. The mystery deepens when you consider the global distribution of these impossible construction techniques. From the Cyclopean walls of Mycenae in Greece, to the perfectly fitted stones of Ollantaytambo in Peru, from the massive dolmens scattered across Western Europe, to the precision-cut blocks of Pumapunku in Bolivia, the same impossible engineering appears on every continent. The mathematical precision, the astronomical alignments, the sheer scale of these projects suggests not just advanced knowledge, but builders physically capable of implementing that knowledge on a superhuman scale. But perhaps the most intriguing evidence comes from the tools themselves. Archaeological sites worldwide have yielded implements that seem designed for hands much larger than our own. In the Sahara Desert, researchers have discovered stone axes with handles clearly intended for grips far exceeding normal human proportions. The weight distribution and balance points of these tools suggest users with significantly greater arm length and hand span than modern humans possess. Cave paintings and petroglyphs add another layer of evidence that's been largely ignored by mainstream archaeology. Throughout the American Southwest, indigenous rock art consistently depicts human figures of dramatically different sizes interacting with each other. These aren't stylistic choices or symbolic representations. They show detailed scenes of daily life, where some figures tower over others by factors of 2 or 3 to 1. The proportional relationships are maintained across thousands of individual artworks spanning centuries, suggesting these size differences reflected observed reality rather than artistic imagination. Similar depictions appear in rock art worldwide. In Australia, Aboriginal paintings show the Quincan spirits, described in oral tradition as giant beings who taught early humans essential survival skills. The cave paintings at Kakadu National Park include figures that dwarf the normal human representations, painted with anatomical accuracy that suggests the artists were depicting beings they had actually encountered. European cave paintings from sites like Lascaux and Altamira, while famous for their animal depictions, also contain human figures of varying scales that traditional archaeology dismisses as artistic license. But when viewed in the context of global giant traditions, these size variations take on new significance. They may represent accurate documentary evidence of different humanoid species coexisting in prehistoric Europe. The suppression of this evidence becomes particularly suspicious when you trace what happened to the most significant discoveries. The Smithsonian Institution's early annual reports from the late 1800s contain numerous references to giant skeletal remains being shipped to Washington for study. The 1895 report specifically mentions the acquisition of abnormally large skeletal specimens from burial mounds in Ohio, Tennessee, and West Virginia. Yet by the early 1900s, these references disappear entirely from official publications. When researchers in recent decades have attempted to locate these specimens in the Smithsonian's vast collections, they've been met with bureaucratic stonewalling. Requests for access are denied, records are claimed to be lost, and entire categories of artifacts seem to have vanished from catalogue systems. The few specimens that can be tracked show a disturbing pattern of being reclassified, mislabeled, or simply removed from public access without explanation. This pattern of suppression extends beyond American institutions. The British Museum, the Louvre, and major archaeological institutions worldwide show similar gaps in their collections where giant remains should logically exist. Private collectors who acquired specimens in the early 20th century report mysterious visits from government officials who requested the donation of their artifacts to undisclosed research facilities. The motivations behind this systematic suppression become clearer when you consider the implications of accepting giant evidence at face value. The current paradigm of human evolution, carefully constructed over more than a century of academic research, allows no room for the existence of multiple humanoid species of dramatically different sizes coexisting throughout recorded history. The discovery that giants were real would necessitate a complete rewriting of anthropology, archaeology, and human origins research. Educational institutions have invested enormous resources and reputations in promoting a specific narrative of gradual human development from primitive beginnings to modern civilization. The existence of advanced giant civilizations possessing sophisticated engineering knowledge would shatter this carefully maintained timeline. If giants built the megalithic sites, then human civilization is far older and far more complex than academic orthodoxy allows. There's also a more disturbing possibility that explains the vehemence with which giant evidence is suppressed. What if these discoveries reveal not just that giants existed, but that they possessed knowledge and capabilities that modern humans have lost? The precision of ancient construction, the astronomical sophistication of megalithic alignments, the mathematical perfection of sites like the Great Pyramid suggest technological understanding that in many ways exceeds our current abilities. The idea that our ancestors, or the giants who may have guided them, possessed advanced knowledge that we've forgotten challenges the fundamental assumption of linear progress that underlies modern society. It suggests that civilization doesn't inevitably advance, but can decline, that knowledge can be lost, that we may not represent the pinnacle of human achievement, but rather a diminished remnant of something far greater. Religious implications add another layer of complexity to the suppression. If the biblical accounts of Nephilim are historically accurate rather than mythological, it validates scriptural narratives that secular academia has spent centuries attempting to discredit. The existence of giants would lend credence to other biblical accounts of supernatural intervention in human affairs, challenging the materialist worldview that dominates modern scientific institutions. The evidence continues to emerge despite official suppression efforts. Modern construction projects occasionally uncover remains that don't fit standard parameters. In 2005, highway construction in Greece reportedly uncovered skeletal remains measuring over 8 feet in length, complete with unusually robust bone structure and enlarged skull capacity. The remains were quickly removed by government archaeologists and have not been mentioned in any official publications since the initial local news reports. Similar discoveries occur with increasing frequency as urban expansion and infrastructure development disturb previously undisturbed archaeological sites. Each time, the same pattern emerges: initial local excitement, brief media coverage, followed by official intervention and subsequent silence. The bones disappear into institutional collections where public access is carefully controlled, but the most compelling evidence may be hiding in plain sight, encoded in the architectural legacy these giants left behind. Every megalithic site on Earth represents a puzzle piece in a global pattern that mainstream archaeology refuses to acknowledge. When viewed collectively, these sites reveal a sophistication of knowledge, a precision of execution, and a scale of ambition that points to builders far exceeding normal human capabilities. The truth about Earth's giant inhabitants may be the most important suppressed knowledge of our time, because understanding who built these monuments, who possessed this advanced knowledge, and what happened to these extraordinary beings might hold the key to understanding our own origins and our true potential as a species. The evidence is there, scattered across museum basements and buried in forgotten archives, waiting for those brave enough to piece together the forbidden history of the giants who once walked among us. The question isn't whether giants existed, but whether we're ready to confront the implications of that truth for everything we think we know about our world and ourselves. What's perhaps most revealing about the systematic suppression of giant evidence is how it mirrors patterns we see throughout history when inconvenient truths threaten established power structures. The same institutions that control our understanding of the past also shape our perception of human potential and our place in the cosmic order. If giants possessed knowledge that allowed them to manipulate massive stones with ease, to align their monuments with celestial precision, and to create structures that still defy modern engineering capabilities, then what does that say about the limitations we've accepted for ourselves? The answer lies in examining the specific technologies these giants appear to have mastered. Acoustic levitation, the manipulation of sound waves to move massive objects, appears throughout ancient texts and may explain how impossibly heavy stones were positioned with such precision. Laboratory experiments have demonstrated that focused sound waves can indeed cause objects to levitate, though modern science has barely scratched the surface of these principles. Yet ancient sites worldwide show evidence of acoustic engineering that suggests builders understood these forces intimately. At the ancient city of Nan Madol in Micronesia, local legends insist the massive basalt blocks were levitated into position using sound. The oral traditions describe twin sorcerer kings who commanded the stones to fly through the air and arrange themselves into the precise patterns we see today. Western archaeology dismisses these accounts as primitive mythology, but the engineering reality of Nan Madol suggests otherwise. The basalt columns, some weighing up to 50 tons, were somehow transported across water and stacked to heights of 40 feet without any conventional construction equipment. The precision of their placement and the acoustic properties of the resulting chambers hint at builders who understood principles of resonance that we're only beginning to rediscover. Similar acoustic anomalies appear at sites across the globe. The oracle chamber at Hypogeum in Malta produces sound frequencies that induce altered states of consciousness in human visitors. Modern researchers have measured infrasonic resonances at the site that affect brain activity in ways that suggest intentional design. The chamber's dimensions create standing wave patterns that focus and amplify specific frequencies, turning the entire structure into a massive acoustic instrument. Yet traditional archaeology insists this sophisticated acoustic engineering was achieved accidentally by Neolithic farmers using primitive stone tools. The mathematical precision of these ancient sites reveals another layer of giant knowledge that challenges our assumptions about prehistoric capabilities. The Great Pyramid of Giza encodes the mathematical constant pi in its proportions, incorporates the golden ratio in its internal geometry, and aligns with cardinal directions to within 3/60ths of a degree. The structure's base perimeter, divided by its height, equals pi to several decimal places, a level of precision that requires advanced mathematical understanding and surveying techniques. But the Great Pyramid isn't unique in this regard. Stonehenge incorporates complex astronomical calculations in its layout, predicting eclipses and marking celestial events with accuracy that rivals modern observatories. The site's heelstone aligns perfectly with the summer solstice sunrise, while other stones mark the extremes of lunar cycles with precision that requires generations of careful observation and mathematical modelling. Traditional archaeology attributes this sophistication to Bronze Age farmers, but the mathematical knowledge required suggests builders with intellectual capabilities far exceeding those of primitive agricultural societies. In Peru, the site of Machu Picchu demonstrates engineering principles that modern architects struggle to replicate. The structures are built to flex during earthquakes without collapsing, incorporating interlocking stone joints that distribute seismic stress throughout the entire complex. The terraces follow natural contours while creating perfectly level planting surfaces, requiring surveying accuracy and hydraulic engineering that shouldn't exist in pre-Columbian South America. The site's alignment with astronomical events shows the same sophisticated knowledge of celestial mechanics found at sites worldwide. These engineering achievements become comprehensible when viewed through the lens of giant builders. Beings with enhanced physical capabilities could manipulate the massive stones with precision impossible for normal humans. Their increased brain volume, proportional to their larger skulls consistently found in archaeological contexts, could have supported enhanced cognitive abilities. The mathematical and engineering knowledge encoded in these sites might represent the natural intellectual capacity of beings whose neurological architecture exceeded our own. The global distribution of similar construction techniques suggests these giants weren't isolated populations but part of a connected civilization that spanned continents. The same polygonal masonry appears in Peru and Easter Island, in Lebanon and Japan. The same acoustic engineering principles show up in Malta and Cambodia. The same astronomical alignments guide construction from England to Egypt to Cambodia. This level of technological consistency across vast distances implies either direct contact between far-flung populations or a common source of knowledge that influenced builders worldwide. Ancient maps provide tantalizing evidence of this global giant civilization. The Piri Reis map of 1513 shows the coastline of Antarctica with remarkable accuracy, depicting the continent as it would appear without ice coverage. Modern geological surveys confirm that the map's details match the actual topography beneath the ice sheet. Yet Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and its ice-free coastline hasn't been visible for thousands of years. The map's annotations claim it was compiled from ancient sources, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. The Oronteus Finaeus map of 1532 shows even more detailed knowledge of Antarctica's ice-free geography, including mountain ranges and river systems that weren't mapped by modern expeditions until the 20th century. These maps suggest the existence of ancient maritime civilizations with global reach and sophisticated navigational knowledge. The scale of such operations would require populations large enough and capable enough to undertake transoceanic voyages using technologies we don't fully understand. Consider the Easter Island statues, or moai, as evidence of this global giant network. The statues themselves clearly depict beings with elongated skulls and facial features that don't match Polynesian populations. Recent excavations have revealed that the statues have bodies buried up to their necks, making them far larger than previously recognized. Some stand over 30 feet tall when fully exposed, with proportions that suggest they were carved as portraits of actual individuals rather than stylized representations. The logistics of creating and positioning these massive sculptures would challenge modern engineering capabilities. The largest completed statue weighs approximately 80 tons, yet somehow ancient builders transported it from the quarry site to its final position using methods that remain unexplained. Local traditions insist the statues walked to their destinations under their own power, guided by the spiritual authority of the builders. While mainstream archaeology dismisses this as mythology, the engineering reality suggests transportation techniques far more sophisticated than rolling logs and rope systems. The elongated skulls found throughout Peru, Bolivia, and other regions where megalithic construction flourishes provide additional evidence of giant populations with enhanced capabilities. These skulls aren't simply bound or artificially deformed examples of normal human remains. They show increased cranial volume, different bone thickness, and structural features that don't match known human variations. DNA analysis of some specimens has yielded results that don't correspond to any known human populations, suggesting genetic lineages outside the normal range of human diversity. Dr. Brian Forster, who has studied these elongated skulls extensively, reports finding specimens with cranial volumes up to 30% larger than modern humans. The bone structure shows different suture patterns, additional bone plates, and density characteristics that don't match normal human skulls. Some specimens show evidence of trepanation, advanced surgical procedures that suggest medical knowledge far exceeding what should exist in prehistoric populations. The systematic suppression of this evidence extends to modern genetic research. When DNA samples from elongated skulls produce results that don't match known human haplogroups, the studies are often discontinued or their results buried in institutional archives. Research funding for projects that might validate non-human origins of these specimens is consistently denied, while conventional interpretations receive abundant support. This pattern of suppression reveals the true stakes involved in acknowledging giant evidence. The existence of advanced prehistoric civilizations with capabilities exceeding our own would fundamentally challenge the linear progression narrative that justifies current power structures. If ancient giants possessed technologies we've lost, if they understood principles of physics and engineering that we're only beginning to rediscover, then our assumption of inevitable progress becomes questionable. The implications extend beyond archaeology into fields like energy production, construction techniques, and even consciousness research. If giants could levitate massive stones using sound frequencies, what other applications might exist for acoustic technologies we don't fully understand? If their monuments were designed to affect human consciousness through specific resonant frequencies, what therapeutic or educational applications might we be missing? The knowledge encoded in giant architecture might hold solutions to contemporary challenges that conventional science hasn't yet discovered. The precision of their astronomical alignments could inform more accurate calendar systems or enhanced understanding of celestial mechanics. Their hydraulic engineering, evident in sites like Machu Picchu and Angkor Wat, might provide models for sustainable water management in an era of increasing drought and climate uncertainty. But accessing this knowledge requires acknowledging its source, accepting that beings of extraordinary capabilities once walked this earth and left behind monuments to their achievements. The institutional resistance to this acknowledgement reveals how deeply our current worldview depends on maintaining the illusion of human supremacy in the historical narrative. The evidence continues to accumulate despite suppression efforts. Ground-penetrating radar surveys at megalithic sites worldwide reveal underground chambers and tunnel systems of vast extent. These hidden spaces often contain artifacts and architectural features that don't match the supposed time periods of surface construction. Access to these areas is typically restricted by governmental or institutional authorities, preventing independent researchers from documenting what lies beneath. Satellite imagery reveals additional anomalies that suggest the scale of ancient construction exceeds what's visible at ground level. Geometric patterns emerge from aerial photography that weren't apparent to surface observers, showing site layouts that extend far beyond recognized boundaries. These patterns often incorporate mathematical relationships and astronomical alignments that demonstrate sophisticated planning and execution capabilities. The truth about Earth's giant inhabitants represents more than historical curiosity. It challenges us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human potential, about the nature of knowledge, and about our relationship to the cosmos. If giants possessed capabilities we've forgotten, then perhaps human potential extends far beyond current limitations. If their monuments were designed to enhance consciousness and facilitate learning, then we might be living diminished lives, cut off from technologies and knowledge systems that could transform our understanding of reality itself. The giants who once walked among us left more than stone monuments. They left a challenge to expand our conception of what's possible, to question the limitations we've accepted, and to consider that our ancestors, or those who guided them, achieved things we're only beginning to imagine. The evidence is there, waiting for those courageous enough to look beyond the official narratives and discover the extraordinary truth about our forgotten past. The technological sophistication of these giant civilizations becomes even more apparent when we examine their understanding of metallurgy and materials science. Archaeological sites worldwide contain evidence of metalworking techniques that shouldn't exist according to conventional timelines. In Peru, researchers have discovered ornamental goldwork with microscopic detail that requires magnification to fully appreciate. The precision of these pieces exceeds what should be possible using primitive hammering and annealing techniques. The famous Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a Greek shipwreck and dating to approximately 100 BCE, demonstrates mechanical complexity that rivals Swiss clockwork. This bronze device contains dozens of interlocking gears calculated to predict astronomical events with remarkable accuracy. Traditional archaeology struggles to explain how ancient Greeks developed such sophisticated mechanical engineering, but when viewed in the context of giant knowledge systems, the device might represent inherited technology rather than isolated innovation. Similar technological anomalies appear in metallurgical analysis of ancient artifacts. The Iron Pillar of Delhi, standing over 23 feet tall and weighing more than 6 tons, shows no signs of rust despite being exposed to India's monsoon climate for over 1,600 years. Modern metallurgical analysis reveals a composition and forging technique that produces corrosion resistance exceeding modern steel alloys. The pillar's construction required temperatures and pressure applications that challenge explanations based on ancient Indian metalworking capabilities. In South America, the legendary Damascus steel produced blades with cutting capabilities and flexibility that modern metallurgy has struggled to replicate. The steel's distinctive watered pattern results from carbon nanotube formations within the metal matrix, creating properties that weren't officially discovered by materials science until the late 20th century. Yet ancient smiths were incorporating these advanced materials principles into weapons and tools thousands of years ago. The precision required for such metallurgical achievements suggests not just advanced knowledge, but physical capabilities that exceed normal human limitations. Forging techniques that require sustained high-temperature work, precise timing, and enormous physical strength become more plausible when performed by beings with enhanced size and proportional power. The hammering force needed to create Damascus steel's distinctive layered structure would challenge even modern power hammers, yet ancient smiths accomplished this using hand tools. Stone cutting techniques provide another window into giant capabilities that conventional archaeology can't adequately explain. At the temple complex of Karnak in Egypt, granite blocks show tool marks that indicate cutting speeds far exceeding what copper implements should achieve. The grooves are too deep, too smooth, and too consistent with rapid material removal using unknown techniques. Some cuts appear to have been made in single passes through granite blocks several feet thick, requiring cutting tools and applied force that don't match the supposed technological capabilities of ancient Egypt. The precision boring found in Egyptian granite vessels presents similar challenges. These containers, carved from solid granite and diorite, show internal geometries that require specialized drilling equipment. The walls maintain consistent thickness throughout complex curves, and many pieces show concentricity and symmetry that rivals modern machine tooling. Creating such precision in materials ranking 6 to 7 on the Mohs hardness scale requires diamond-tipped tools and precision machinery, yet thousands of these vessels predate the supposed invention of iron tools. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, the famous H-blocks demonstrate stone-cutting precision that exceeds modern capabilities. These massive andesite blocks, some weighing over 130 tons, are cut with perfectly flat surfaces, precise right angles, and complex interlocking joints. The surfaces are so smooth they reflect light like mirrors, and the dimensional accuracy measures within tolerances of less than 1 millimeter across spans of several meters. Modern stonemasons using diamond-tipped power tools struggle to achieve such precision in similar materials. The transportation methods used to move these impossibly heavy stones remain equally mysterious. At Baalbek in Lebanon, the foundation stones of the Jupiter Temple complex include blocks weighing over 800 tons, positioned with precision that requires millimeter-accurate placement. Moving such masses would challenge modern heavy lifting equipment, yet ancient builders somehow quarried, transported, and positioned these megalithic blocks using techniques that left no trace in the archaeological record. Local legends at Baalbek speak of giants who built the original foundations before human inhabitants arrived in the region. These stories describe beings of enormous size who could lift the great stones with ease. Positioning them, according to the site, suggests builders with capabilities far exceeding normal human limitations. Mainstream archaeology dismisses these accounts as mythology, the engineering reality of two celestial patterns that aligned the complex with astronomical events. While the global distribution of similar impossible engineering achievements indicates these weren't isolated developments, but part of a connected knowledge system. The same precision stone cutting appears at sites separated by thousands of miles and supposedly centuries of time. The same astronomical alignments guide construction from Stonehenge to Angkor Wat. The same mathematical relationships appear encoded in monuments from Peru to Cambodia to Ireland. This consistency suggests either direct contact between far-flung populations or inheritance from a common source of knowledge. Given the technological sophistication required and the physical challenges involved, the most logical explanation points to builders with enhanced capabilities working within a global civilization that possessed advanced understanding of engineering, mathematics, and astronomy. The water management systems found at ancient sites provide additional evidence of giant engineering capabilities. At Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the temple complex sits within a sophisticated hydraulic network that channels monsoon floodwaters through carefully engineered canals and reservoirs. The system maintains precise water levels throughout the year, prevents flooding during heavy rains, and provides irrigation for agricultural areas extending for miles in all directions. The engineering precision of this hydraulic system rivals modern water management projects. The gradients are calculated to maintain optimal flow rates, the reservoir capacities are sized for maximum efficiency, and the distribution networks ensure even water delivery across vast agricultural areas. The construction required moving millions of tons of earth, carving thousands of stone channels, and coordinating the work across landscapes spanning hundreds of square miles. Similar hydraulic engineering appears at sites worldwide. The ancient city of Petra in Jordan features a water collection and distribution system carved directly into sandstone cliffs. The channels maintain precise gradients across miles of carved conduits, collecting rainfall from vast catchment areas and delivering it to cisterns throughout the city. The system includes settling tanks, filtration chambers, and pressure equalization features that demonstrate advanced understanding of hydraulic principles. At Machu Picchu, the water management system demonstrates engineering sophistication that exceeds modern capabilities in earthquake-prone environments. The stone channels flex during seismic events without breaking, maintaining water flow through structures that would shatter conventional piping systems. The fountains throughout the complex maintain consistent pressure and flow rates, using gravitational systems that require precise calculations and flawless execution. These hydraulic achievements become more comprehensible when attributed to builders with enhanced physical and intellectual capabilities. The surveying accuracy required for proper gradients, the mathematical calculations needed for optimal system design, and the construction precision necessary for long-term functionality all point to engineering knowledge and execution abilities that exceed conventional explanations. The acoustic properties embedded in ancient architecture reveal another dimension of giant knowledge that modern science is only beginning to understand. The chambers within the Great Pyramid produce resonant frequencies that match the planet's natural electromagnetic pulse. Standing inside these chambers during certain conditions, visitors report altered states of consciousness, enhanced creativity, and profound spiritual experiences. The dimensions and angles of these spaces appear specifically designed to amplify and focus sound waves in ways that affect human neurological activity. At the ancient theatre of Epidaurus in Greece, acoustic engineering allows a whisper spoken on stage to be clearly heard throughout the entire amphitheatre, which seats over 14,000 people. The sound quality exceeds that of many modern venues equipped with electronic amplification systems. The precise mathematical relationships governing the theatre's design demonstrate understanding of wave mechanics and acoustic principles that weren't officially discovered until the modern era. The Goseck Circle in Germany, one of the oldest solar observatories in the world, incorporates acoustic elements that enhance its astronomical functions. The earthwork's design creates acoustic effects that amplify sounds from specific directions while dampening others. During solstice alignments, when the sun's rays penetrate the structure at precise angles, the acoustic properties change in ways that suggest intentional integration of light and sound phenomena. These acoustic achievements point to builders who understood the relationship between sound, consciousness, and physical matter in ways that modern science is only beginning to explore. The consistent incorporation of these principles into sacred and ceremonial architecture worldwide suggests a sophisticated knowledge system that was deliberately encoded into humanity's most important monuments. The astronomical precision found in ancient sites reveals mathematical and observational capabilities that challenge conventional understanding of prehistoric intellectual development. The Antikythera mechanism's gear ratios precisely match the orbital periods of known planets, incorporating corrections for irregular lunar cycles and planetary retrograde motions. The device predicts eclipses, tracks Olympic Games schedules, and maintains calendar accuracy over centuries of operation. At Newgrange in Ireland, the passage tomb's entrance is aligned to receive sunlight only during the winter solstice sunrise. The alignment is so precise that light penetrates the chamber for exactly 17 minutes, illuminating the inner sanctum with mathematical accuracy that requires sophisticated astronomical observation and surveying techniques. The monument predates Stonehenge by several centuries, suggesting advanced knowledge existed in prehistoric Ireland far earlier than conventional timelines allow. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Maya books, contains astronomical calculations that predict planetary positions with accuracy exceeding medieval European astronomy. The Venus tables track the planet's synodic period to within hours over centuries of observation. The eclipse tables predict lunar and solar eclipses with precision that requires mathematical models of extraordinary sophistication. These achievements become more plausible when attributed to beings with enhanced intellectual capabilities. The extended observation periods required for such astronomical accuracy, the mathematical modeling needed for predictive calculations, and the construction precision necessary for physical alignments all suggest cognitive abilities that exceed normal human parameters. The genetic evidence that supports the existence of giant populations continues to emerge despite institutional suppression. DNA analysis of elongated skulls from Peru has groups. The mitochondrial DNA shows yielded sequences that don't match known human haplovariations outside the normal range of human genetic diversity, suggesting lineages that diverged from standard human populations thousands of years ago. Analysis of ancient hair samples from various archaeological sites has revealed protein structures that don't match modern human hair chemistry. The samples show increased tensile strength, different pigmentation compounds, and growth patterns that suggest physiological differences consistent with larger body sizes and enhanced physical capabilities. Bone density measurements from giant skeletal remains consistently show structural characteristics that exceed normal human parameters. The cortical bone thickness, trabecular density, and mineral composition all indicate individuals with enhanced strength and durability. These aren't pathological conditions or genetic anomalies, but consistent variations that suggest distinct populations with enhanced physical capabilities. The systematic suppression of this genetic evidence reveals the stakes involved in maintaining conventional narratives about human origins. If giant populations possess distinct genetic characteristics that enhance their capabilities, it challenges fundamental assumptions about human evolution and our place in the biological hierarchy. The implications extend beyond archaeology into fields like genetics, anthropology, and evolutionary biology. Modern attempts to replicate ancient construction techniques consistently fail to achieve the precision and scale found at megalithic sites. Experimental archaeology projects using traditional tools and methods can't duplicate the stone-cutting accuracy, transportation logistics, or construction precision found at ancient monuments. The gap between theoretical explanations and practical achievements grows wider as researchers attempt more ambitious reconstructions. The Nova television series attempted to build a small pyramid using ancient Egyptian techniques, requiring modern equipment and engineering support to achieve even modest results. The project highlighted the enormous challenges involved in quarrying, transporting, and positioning massive stone blocks using primitive tools and human labor. Scaling these challenges to the dimensions of actual ancient monuments reveals the inadequacy of conventional explanations. Similar experimental projects at other sites have yielded comparable results. Attempts to move Easter Island statues using rope and wooden rollers have succeeded only with modern support equipment and carefully controlled conditions. The precision stone cutting demonstrated at Puma Punku remains impossible to replicate using supposed ancient techniques, even with modern tool steel and power equipment. These experimental failures underscore the reality that ancient builders possessed capabilities that exceed current understanding. The consistent precision, massive scale, and global distribution of impossible achievements point to builders with enhanced physical and intellectual capabilities working within knowledge systems that have been lost to modern civilization. The truth about Earth's giant inhabitants represents more than historical revision. It challenges us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human potential, technological development, and our relationship to knowledge itself. If beings of extraordinary capabilities once shared this planet with us, their legacy might hold keys to capabilities we've forgotten how to access. The monuments they left behind weren't just architectural achievements, but encoded knowledge systems designed to preserve and transmit advanced understanding across millennia. The mathematical relationships, astronomical alignments, and acoustic properties embedded in these structures suggest they were built as teaching tools, designed to guide future generations toward rediscovering lost capabilities. Understanding the true nature of our giant predecessors might unlock human potential that has remained dormant since their disappearance. The evidence suggests they possessed not just enhanced physical capabilities, but expanded consciousness and deeper understanding of reality's fundamental principles. Their monuments stand as challenges to expand our conception of what's possible and we're only beginning to imagine. Reminders that human achievement once reached heights. The systematic suppression of giant evidence reveals institutional investment in maintaining narratives that limit human potential rather than expanding it. By keeping this knowledge hidden, current power structures preserve their authority over populations who don't realize their true capabilities. The giants who once walked among us left more than stone monuments. They left proof that extraordinary achievement is possible when knowledge, capability, and consciousness align in pursuit of something greater than individual limitation. Their story isn't just about the past, it's about what we might become when we remember what we once were and reclaim the knowledge that giants once shared with humanity. The evidence is there, carved in stone and encoded in mathematics, waiting for minds brave enough to see beyond official narratives and discover the extraordinary truth about our forgotten heritage. The trail of evidence leads us to perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this entire mystery, the deliberate and systematic destruction of giant remains that couldn't be hidden away in institutional vaults. Archaeological reports from the early 20th century describe incidents where giant skeletons were not just removed from public view, but actively destroyed to prevent any future study or verification. In 1923, workers constructing a railroad line near Phoenix, Arizona, uncovered what appeared to be an entire burial ground containing remains of unusual size. The initial newspaper reports described skeletons measuring between 8 and 10 feet in length, found in association with copper weapons and ornate pottery that didn't match known Native American cultural patterns. Local authorities contacted the Smithsonian Institution, as was standard procedure for significant archaeological finds. But instead of careful excavation and scientific documentation, what followed was unprecedented destruction. According to eyewitness accounts preserved in private letters and diary entries, representatives from an unnamed government agency arrived at the site and ordered the immediate burial of the entire excavation. Concrete was poured over the burial ground, and the railroad construction was rerouted to avoid the area entirely. The workers who had discovered the remains were reportedly paid substantial sums and required to sign agreements preventing them from discussing their find. This pattern of destruction rather than study appears repeatedly in the historical record. In Montana, a 1928 mining operation uncovered what local newspapers described as the bones of ancient giants in a cave system deep underground. The initial reports included measurements and detailed descriptions of the unusual skull formations and bone density. Within weeks, however, the cave entrance was dynamited shut, officially due to safety concerns about unstable rock formations. Local residents reported seeing military vehicles in the area during the closure operation. The destruction wasn't limited to American discoveries. In Romania, during construction of a hydroelectric dam in the 1962nd, workers uncovered skeletal remains of extraordinary size in what appeared to be an artificial chamber carved into solid rock. Romanian authorities initially planned standard archaeological investigation, but the site was quickly classified under national security provisions. The entire area was flooded when the dam construction continued ahead of schedule, permanently submerging any evidence. What makes these destruction patterns particularly suspicious is their coordination with the suppression of research into alternative archaeological theories. Academic careers were systematically destroyed for researchers who dared to question conventional timelines or suggest that prehistoric civilizations might have possessed advanced capabilities. The few scholars who attempted to study giant remains or publish papers on anomalous archaeological evidence found themselves ostracized, defunded, and ultimately forced out of their institutions. Dr. Carlos Ameghino, a respected paleontologist who discovered human remains in geological strata that predated accepted human migration timelines, saw his reputation systematically attacked after he refused to retract his findings. His carefully documented discoveries in Argentina suggested human presence in South America far earlier than conventional theories allowed. When he also reported finding skeletal remains of unusual size in association with these early human artifacts, his academic career was effectively ended through coordinated institutional pressure. The pattern repeats with disturbing consistency. Researchers who find evidence that challenges established narratives about human origins face professional destruction, while those who toe the party line receive funding, tenure, and academic recognition. This systematic suppression creates a climate where even honest researchers learn to ignore or reinterpret evidence that doesn't fit approved theories. But the suppression goes beyond destroying careers and burying evidence. There's mounting documentation that certain discoveries have been actively concealed through the creation of false archaeological sites designed to discredit legitimate researchers. When Dr. Russell Burroughs claimed to have discovered a cave in Illinois containing artifacts that suggested pre-Columbian contact between Old and New World civilizations, investigators who examined the site found obvious modern forgeries mixed with potentially authentic materials. The pattern suggests a deliberate strategy of poisoning the well, creating obvious hoaxes that can be easily debunked to discredit the entire field of alternative archaeology. When legitimate researchers point to genuine anomalies, critics can respond by referencing known hoaxes and suggesting that all such claims are equally fraudulent. This technique effectively immunizes mainstream archaeology against challenges to its fundamental assumptions. The economic motivations behind this suppression become clearer when you consider the industries that depend on maintaining current historical narratives. Educational publishing companies have invested billions in textbooks based on established timelines. Museums have built their reputations and attendance around carefully curated displays that support conventional theories. Archaeological institutions receive government funding specifically to reinforce approved versions of human development. If evidence emerged that fundamentally challenged these narratives, it would necessitate rewriting textbooks, redesigning museum exhibits, and acknowledging that decades of academic research were built on flawed assumptions. The financial costs alone would run into the hundreds of billions of dollars, not counting the institutional embarrassment and loss of public trust in academic authority. But there's an even deeper motivation that explains the vehemence with which giant evidence is suppressed. The existence of advanced prehistoric civilizations with capabilities exceeding our own would fundamentally challenge the assumption of inevitable progress that justifies current social and political structures. If ancient giants possessed technologies we've lost, if they understood principles of physics and consciousness that we've forgotten, then our current civilization represents not the pinnacle of human achievement, but a diminished remnant of something far greater. This realization would inevitably lead to questions about what knowledge has been lost, how it was lost, and whether current institutions are capable of recovering and properly utilizing such knowledge. The implications extend far beyond archaeology into fields like energy production, construction techniques, consciousness research, and even governance systems. If giants organized societies that lasted for millennia without the warfare and environmental destruction that characterizes our current civilization, then perhaps our social and economic models are fundamentally flawed. The response to such questioning would likely involve massive social upheaval as people demanded access to suppressed knowledge and technologies. Current power structures, which depend on maintaining scarcity and limiting human potential, would face existential challenges from populations that realize their true capabilities. The careful control of information that maintains social stability would collapse under the weight of evidence that humanity has been deliberately kept in ignorance of its own history and potential. Recent developments in independent media and digital communication have made it increasingly difficult to maintain total information control. Researchers working outside institutional frameworks have begun documenting and sharing evidence that was previously accessible only to academic insiders. High-resolution photography, advanced scanning techniques, and global communication networks allow independent investigators to study and share findings without relying on institutional approval. This democratization of information has led to renewed interest in giant archaeology among researchers who aren't beholden to institutional funding or academic careers. Private investigators with access to sophisticated equipment have begun conducting their own excavations and analyses, often producing results that contradict official findings. While these independent researchers lack the credibility of institutional backing, their work is increasingly difficult to ignore or suppress. The Internet has also enabled global collaboration among researchers studying similar phenomena in different locations. Patterns that were invisible when studied in isolation become apparent when evidence from multiple continents is compared and analyzed collectively. The consistency of construction techniques, the similarity of astronomical alignments, and the global distribution of similar artifacts suggest coordinated activity on a scale that challenges conventional understanding of prehistoric capabilities. Satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar have revealed additional anomalies that weren't visible to earlier generations of researchers. Geometric patterns emerge from aerial photography that show clear evidence of artificial construction extending far beyond recognized archaeological sites. Underground chambers and tunnel systems of vast extent appear on radar scans, often connecting sites that were previously thought to be isolated monuments. These technological advances have made it increasingly difficult for institutional authorities to control access to archaeological information. While they can still restrict physical access to important sites, they can't prevent independent analysis of publicly available satellite data or prevent researchers from sharing their findings through digital networks. The monopoly on archaeological interpretation that institutions once enjoyed is gradually eroding under pressure from independent investigation and global information sharing. The response from established institutions has been to discredit independent researchers by questioning their credentials and methodologies. Academic journals refuse to publish papers that challenge fundamental assumptions about human origins, regardless of the quality of evidence presented. Mainstream media outlets consistently present alternative archaeological theories as fringe beliefs held by conspiracy theorists, rather than legitimate scientific inquiry. But this strategy of dismissal and ridicule is becoming less effective as the quality of independent research improves and the quantity of anomalous evidence accumulates. High-definition photography of precision stone cutting that exceeds modern capabilities can't be dismissed as misinterpretation. Acoustic measurements of ancient chambers that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of resonance principles can't be explained away as coincidence. DNA analysis of anomalous skeletal remains that shows genetic sequences outside normal human parameters can't be ignored indefinitely. The institutional response has escalated to include more aggressive suppression techniques. Independent researchers report mysterious equipment failures, denied access to previously open sites, and digital interference with their communications. Some have experienced more direct pressure, including legal challenges, financial pressure, and even personal threats designed to discourage their continued investigation. These suppression efforts reveal the true stakes involved in maintaining control over archaeological narratives. The evidence for giant civilizations isn't just an academic curiosity that challenges historical timelines. It represents a fundamental threat to the worldview that justifies current power structures and limits human potential. If giants possessed knowledge and capabilities that we've been taught are impossible, then perhaps the limitations we accept for ourselves are artificial constructions designed to maintain control rather than natural boundaries of human achievement. The truth about Earth's giant inhabitants may be emerging despite institutional efforts to suppress it. Too much evidence has accumulated across too many different fields of study for the suppression to remain effective indefinitely. Archaeological anomalies, genetic analysis, technological achievements, and architectural precision all point toward the same conclusion. Beings of extraordinary capabilities once inhabited this planet and left behind monuments to their achievements that we're only beginning to understand. As this evidence continues to emerge and becomes accessible to broader audiences through independent research and digital communication, it will inevitably force a re-evaluation of fundamental assumptions about human origins, capabilities, and potential. The giants who once walked among us left more than stone monuments and mysterious artifacts. They left proof that extraordinary achievement is possible when knowledge, capability, and consciousness align in pursuit of something greater than individual limitation. Their legacy challenges us to expand our conception of what's possible, to question the limitations we've accepted, and to consider that our ancestors achieved things we're only beginning to imagine. The evidence is there, carved in stone and encoded in genetics, waiting for minds brave enough to see beyond official narratives and discover the extraordinary truth about our forgotten heritage. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond archaeology or ancient history. If giants possessed advanced knowledge that enabled them to manipulate matter, consciousness, and energy in ways we don't understand, then that knowledge might still be accessible to those who know where to look and how to interpret the clues they left behind. The monuments scattered across our planet may not just be memorials to a vanished civilization, but active repositories of information waiting to be decoded by minds ready to receive it. The suppression of giant evidence isn't just about controlling the past. It's about controlling the future, ensuring that humanity remains limited to capabilities that can be managed and controlled by existing power structures. But as the evidence continues to emerge and becomes impossible to ignore, that control is beginning to slip. The giants who once shared this world with us may be about to share their secrets with us once again, whether the guardians of orthodox thinking are ready or not. The question isn't whether giants existed on Earth. The evidence for that is overwhelming once you know where to look. The question is whether we're ready to accept the implications of that existence for everything we think we know about ourselves, our world, and our potential as conscious beings inhabiting a universe far stranger and more wonderful than we've been taught to believe. The monuments these giants left behind weren't simply architectural achievements or demonstrations of superior construction capabilities. They were encoded instruction manuals, designed to preserve and transmit knowledge across millennia to future generations who might possess the intellectual capacity to decode their messages. Every angle, every alignment, every mathematical relationship embedded within these structures serves a dual purpose: functional engineering and educational curriculum for minds ready to receive advanced knowledge. Consider the internal chambers of the Great Pyramid, where the king's chamber resonates at a frequency of 440 Hz, the same pitch as the musical note A that forms the foundation of Western musical scales. This isn't coincidental resonance resulting from arbitrary construction choices. The chamber's dimensions create standing wave patterns that affect human brainwave activity, potentially facilitating altered states of consciousness that enhance learning and information processing. Ancient Egyptian texts describe initiatory experiences within pyramid chambers, where candidates received direct knowledge transmission, not through spoken instruction but through harmonic induction of expanded awareness states. The mathematical relationships encoded within these structures reveal teaching systems that progress from basic geometric principles to advanced physics concepts that modern science has only recently begun to explore. The Great Pyramid's internal passages demonstrate the mathematical constant pi, the golden ratio, and complex astronomical calculations, but they also incorporate principles of harmonic resonance, electromagnetic field manipulation, and consciousness-matter interaction that suggest the builders understood reality at quantum levels. At Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the temple's layout precisely mirrors the constellation Draco as it appeared in the sky during the spring equinox of 10,500 BCE, thousands of years before the temple's supposed construction date. But the correlation goes beyond simple astronomical alignment. The temple's dimensions encode the precession cycle of Earth's axis, the orbital mechanics of the solar system, and mathematical relationships that describe the structure of space-time itself. Walking through the temple complex becomes a journey through cosmic architecture, where each corridor and chamber teaches different aspects of universal mechanics. The builders embedded multiple layers of information within single structures, creating monuments that function as universities, libraries, and laboratories simultaneously. The acoustic properties of these chambers suggest they were designed for group learning experiences where sound frequencies facilitated collective consciousness states. Imagine educational systems where knowledge wasn't transmitted through individual study, but through harmonic induction that allowed entire groups to access advanced concepts simultaneously. This approach to knowledge preservation explains why giant monuments appear at specific geographical locations rather than being distributed randomly across the landscape. These sites were chosen not just for their defensive advantages or resource availability, but for their position within Earth's natural energy grid. The monuments were built at points where geological, magnetic, and gravitational forces converge to create optimal conditions for consciousness, expansion, and information processing. The global network of these educational monuments suggests a coordinated curriculum that spanned continents and covered the full spectrum of knowledge necessary for advanced civilization. Sites in South America focused on agricultural and biological sciences, demonstrating terracing techniques, irrigation systems, and crop cultivation methods that maximized yield while maintaining soil fertility across centuries of continuous use. European sites emphasized astronomical and mathematical concepts, with stone circles and megalithic complexes that tracked celestial movements with precision exceeding modern observatories. Asian monuments concentrated on consciousness research and energy manipulation, with temple complexes that incorporated meditation chambers, acoustic healing facilities, and structures designed to amplify human psychic abilities. African sites demonstrated metallurgy and materials science, with evidence of advanced smelting techniques and alloy compositions that produced tools and weapons superior to modern equivalents. The curriculum was global, comprehensive, and designed to preserve all aspects of advanced knowledge against the possibility of civilizational collapse. But the most sophisticated aspect of this knowledge preservation system was its built-in protection against misuse. The monuments were designed so that their advanced secrets would only become accessible to minds that had developed sufficient wisdom and ethical foundation to handle dangerous knowledge responsibly. The mathematical keys that unlock deeper levels of information require not just intellectual capability, but emotional maturity and spiritual development that prevents the technology from being used for destructive purposes. This explains why modern attempts to reverse engineer ancient technologies often fail or produce only partial results. The knowledge was never meant to be accessible through purely intellectual analysis. It requires a holistic development of human potential that includes expanded consciousness, ethical refinement, and spiritual awareness, along with technical understanding. The giants who built these monuments understood that advanced technology without corresponding wisdom inevitably leads to civilizational destruction. So here we stand at the crossroads between the official narrative we've been taught and the forbidden truth that whispers from every megalithic monument, every suppressed skeleton, every impossible stone cut with precision that defies conventional explanation. The giants weren't just taller humans. They were the keepers of knowledge we've forgotten, the builders of monuments that still teach us if we have eyes to see. Their legacy challenges everything we think we know about human potential, about the nature of consciousness itself, and about what we might become if we remember what we once were. The evidence is there, carved in stone and written in bone, waiting for minds brave enough to look beyond the veil of institutional control and discover the extraordinary truth about our forgotten heritage.